everyone. Welcome back to the ASPA podcast. My name is Karen Neckelman, and I am the marketing coordinator here. Our guest today is Tony Chatman. He is one of our 3 keynote speakers at this year's annual conference. Hello, Tony. So good to have you with us today.
Hey, Karen, great to see you.
So, Tony, why don't you tell us a little about your background and how did you get where you are today?
Sure. So I'm a professional speaker, author, and I run my own consulting firm. But if you look at my background, I started off actually as a chemical engineer. That's my undergraduate degree. And I worked in that industry for quite a while. I've worked as a nonprofit leader. I've worked in the ministry. I've been a stockbroker. And for me, what was fascinating as I started to look back at what made me successful in all of these different areas, it was my ability to build and maintain healthy relationships. And so what I decided, because that wasn't something I was trained on, I decided to begin studying building relationships the same way I studied chemical engineering, because I knew that there was an art and a science to it. And so that's really become my area of focus. And so for the last 18 years, I've been doing that with my own company, Chatman Enterprises, but that's something I've been doing really throughout my professional career.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So, what is your session about and how can it help our attendees?
Yeah. So my session is called Deliberately Leading Through the Disruption of Change. And the reality is, if you look at the world, we're in this state of perpetual change. And all of the data shows that the rate of change isn't staying the same, it's actually increasing. And so that has an impact on us. Now, we're not always as aware of it as we should be because we're going through it as a shared experience. So we're trying to normalize it. But the reality is, because we've been going through this, we are under far more stress. We are far more anxious and emotional, and we're far less logical. And that's important as we interact with coworkers, subordinates, bosses, clients, students. Everyone is experiencing this change and disruption. And if we're going to influence them, we have to take that into consideration as we interact with them.
So, Tony, what are 3 key takeaways from your presentation that you believe everyone should know?
Sure. So first is there's a difference between change and disruption. Okay. We often use those terms interchangeably, but when there's change, we normally plan change. We think through it. We're planning to move, right? And so we go through this whole process to get our relationships, our behaviors, all of these things in line with our new circumstances. Disruption just happens. It is an unplanned, unexpected change in which everything shifts and we're often in reaction mode. And so when that happens, it's a lot more stressful, a lot more upending. We feel a lot more disoriented. And that may not seem super important, but here's why this is so critical. For people who are in any position of leadership, authority, or influence, when you decide to create a change, you have to understand that your change is other people's disruption. And so, although we think, hey, we're going through this change, it makes sense, it's logical, there's a benefit at the end, to the people who are experiencing this change, it's their disruption, and we have to be prepared for it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, because we go through these stages when there's change or disruption, our emotions play a much bigger role. And we have to realize that our emotions during these moments, they're poor indicators of reality. You can't use them as a barometer of reality because your emotions are off, right? We're not built for this type of change all of the time. And so if we are often judging a situation based on how we feel, well, I feel anxious about this, I'm angry, I'm nervous. If we use that as our primary decision maker, it's going to throw us off. I'm not saying ignore our emotions, but realize that, just like if you put, a compass near a magnet, it's going to be thrown off a bit. We have to realize we're going to be thrown off a bit in that same way. The third, when it comes to resilience, we often think we need to build resilience, and there is a part of that that's true, but we're far more resilient than we realize. We just have to tap into it. And that's part of what we'll have a discussion about when we're together is how resilient we really are, how much our mind naturally moves towards resilience, but then it's our expectations. If we can learn to change our expectations during those moments, we will be far more resilient. So those are the three things.
Okay, and how would you say you balance your professional responsibilities with your personal life? And do you have any advice for people trying to do the same?
Sure. Yeah. So, that's an interesting question right now. I realize life happens in phases. And so what balance looks like in one phase is different than in another. For example, right now we're going through a situation where, we're empty nesters, but we're adult parenting, which is a unique dynamic that no one really tells you what's going on. And then we also are going through the health challenges of our parents and our family members. So, for example, we just found out my dad has prostate cancer, my brother-in-law has bladder cancer, right? We're putting my father-in-law in assisted living. So we're going through all of those things. So what balance looks like in that moment is very different than in other phases. So for me, what I did is I looked at it through a few different lenses. First, personally, how do I make sure I'm good, right? Two things that are really important for me. I make sure I go to the gym, I work out because I need that for myself. And then I normally try to have some kind of hobby that I'm getting into. So this summer, I started my pilot lessons because I've always wanted to fly. And so having those moments where it's in my calendar, it's in stone, I'm focused on these areas where I make sure that I'm refreshed is really important for
Taking
my
breaks.
marriage. Because I'm sorry.
Sorry, I said taking breaks for yourself.
Taking very intentional breaks though. So if you're really busy, you have to make sure that when you take a break that it's something that refreshes you. Sometimes we just take a break because it's just so much, which is important. But then if we can be intentional and say, not only is it so much, but I know I need this. For example, I'm extroverted. I normally like to spend time with other people to get refreshed, right? So knowing that, I plan that into my breaks so that it has more of an impact. So personally, that's one thing, in terms of my relationship with my wife, my marriage, we're making sure that we're going on dates every single week just to keep ourselves refreshed because we're both going through a lot. During the summer, I've actually blocked off my Tuesdays to play golf with my dad, which is, it's a big lift to say Tuesdays, pretty much no work, but I know that relationship is important. And so I'm doing that. And then fourth is kind of figuring out my target couples, right? There's a few couples that we build with. So it's going back to really putting this in perspective. I think what you said at the beginning, the taking breaks is very important. Okay. But being very tactical about how you take breaks. Then the other thing that I do, I don't do work that is not my work. And that may sound obvious or even redundant, but when you run a company, you see every responsibility. And even though I have very capable people all around me, there are times I'm tempted to, well, let me get involved with this. The truth is, I brought them on because they're capable and competent. I have to let them do their work. But I also realize I spend a lot of my time, or at least I used to, worrying about things that someone else is taking care of. I'm going to let them take care of it and not worry about it so I can focus on my responsibilities. And that helps me to balance it as well.
Right. Sounds good. So, our audience are school administrators. So, what do you see as the biggest challenges facing education today?
Sure. I would say from the outside looking in,
Sure.
first you have to deal with funding, right? I mean, it seems that the education system has been under attack uh, financially in many ways. And so trying to figure out funding, not just in terms of resources, but that's going to impact hiring and retention. And so making sure that we create workplace cultures that are healthy, inviting, and they're sustainable. Because we're probably not going to be able to, people can go find jobs for more money. That's just reality. Most people are in this industry because they love it. It's important to them as part of their mission, but to make sure that we're not getting in their way. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing, because of all the change and transition we've been under and the disruption, just making sure we are aware of everyone's social and emotional well-being. People are far more on edge. They're far more emotional. And that's everybody. That is administrators, teachers, children, parents, everyone involved. Those are probably the two biggest that I see, as well as just making sure that we're constantly aware or assessing whether or not our curriculum and our systems are relevant, right? Because the world changes, we have to be very nimble and agile to be able to move with it. But those are the things that I see from the outside looking in as, the biggest challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony, last question. Do you have any expectations for this year's conference?
I'm just excited to be there. I think it's going to be a phenomenal time together. I'm very much looking forward to it because having two sons who've now graduated college, I'm so aware of the role that education plays on our children and on our society from a young age. I'm excited to be able to be in the same room, to be able to share my, experiences and my wisdom, and hopefully have a great impact on those who are having such an impact on the world around us.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tony, for sitting with us today. It was great talking to you. And we are all looking forward to seeing you in October in Seattle.
Thanks, Karen. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person and to seeing everyone there. We should have a fantastic time.
We will. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.